Hello, and welcome to another edition of Storied Arcs podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are getting into Kill or Be Killed, Volume 2. This is a thick one.
It is. It's 6 issues. Yeah.
I was talking in the Zero episode, thinking that maybe these were all the same size. This is chunky.
It is. It's a lot of story there. It's a lot of story there.
It is. And it starts just like our first one, with him in a precarious situation.
Yeah,
he's got the mask on, sitting on a toilet,
yep.
With a shotgun in his hand.
We're dropped in media res again, and again we talked about in the last episode about Dylan being a narrator, but also being an unreliable narrator. He is self-aware. We get to the end of this opening scene. He's like, "Oh, I did it again. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about. I jumped ahead too far," and so he reverses story. So again, we're this idea that he is aware, Dylan is aware that he's narrating a story of his life, and he is aware that he's kind of doing a bad job about it, which again brings into question us as the reader. How much can we really trust what we're seeing out of him? How reliable is he if we're so fluid with time in and out when what we're seeing, when we're seeing it, what he's being told, it adds to the flavor that this isn't narration for narration's sake. It's actually narration to an unknown audience, which I think it's one of those kind of quirks of the story that I enjoy. The fact that Dylan knows he's talking to an audience. He knows someone's reading this.
And not to get more meta, but Brubaker knows what he is telling you and what he isn't telling you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course.
And that's the real genius at work here.
Yeah.
But I want to get on this very first line.
He knows he's setting you up for something, and he knows he's going to set you up in media res, get you to a certain point, and then be like, "Oh, wait, well, stop, back it up," and kind of leave you. Oh, wait, when do we get back to that point? Yeah, he knows exactly how to set up and deliver his punchline later.
Yeah. Okay. So he opens with this: "I don't believe in fate, but you can't deny there's some things in life that fall together like there's actually some big cosmic plan at work," which would suck for about 95% of us, right? Because that means everything in your life is exactly how it's meant to be. All your striving to change things, the entire idea of self-determination, it's all a joke. If you have a sad sack life, it's because it was preordained by God if you believe in God. That's why, unless you're born a billionaire or something, we reject fate. Now, let me say this. This is a man who starts off with this bold declaration of rejecting fate. Why is he sitting on a toilet right now? It's because he believes he's doing the bidding of a demon.
Yep.
So, and again, this is the genius of Brubaker, because I think almost anyone who's reading this, it's got this gritty, realistic feel to it. He is kind of a persuasive narrator, but the situation he's in is juxtaposition with his statements. Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry, you're being hunted by a demon, so that's why you're sitting on a toilet denying fate. It's absurdity, and I just kind of chuckled to myself at Dylan as I was reading that. And I was like, not to take shots across the bow of the internet for no reason, but I was like, really, I think this is how I picture a lot of Reddit users who are trying to like wax philosophy on Reddit. I'm like, I picture you sitting in your parents' basement knowing nothing about anything, except you have good access to Wikipedia. But anyway.
But you're right that you read that and it's like, well, like kind of not wrong, right? Like there's potentially some truth in that. Well, whether it's truth, there's
right. Yeah. No, his logic is great.
Yeah, the logic.
Why we don't want to believe in a determinism is because most of us would not like to believe that we've it reminds me of, and this should be like a drinking game for our podcast. It reminds me of a West Wing episode where they were talking about the estate tax or the death tax.
Oh, yes.
And they were saying, like, why does so many people oppose this when it would only apply to like less than 1% of the population? And President Bartlett says, because they all think it might apply to them someday. Yeah. And it's like, that's so painful. That's like, and that's kind of the double-edged sword. It might even just be a single-edged sword of just American life. Is everyone believes in this extraordinary potential for themselves.
Yeah.
And kind of the individualization of the exceptionalism. And really, you can tell Dylan feels like he's pretty special.
He does, yeah. And again, but he opens this arc, this issue with this rejection of the idea of fate. But all throughout this issue, he's touching on this idea of fate and destiny and self-determination, and are we really in control of things, or do things happen by chance? And whether it's him running into his ex-girlfriend and them going to get a drink, and then it being the same cafe where like a potential mark is there, does that happen because it just happened, or was he supposed to be there because this is the kind of person that he's
exactly
in his mind is on a mission to take care of? And so even there,
especially as we learn that he was getting thin on targets and knocking off dog killers.
Exactly. Yeah. He took out, which, look, a terrible person. I'm not even an animal person. I'm not someone like that, but you can't go around poisoning dogs and people's pets. That's
right.
Terrible.
Yeah. No, I thought of Mallory from Binge Mode.
Yeah.
Save the dog at all costs.
Yeah. That's the worst possible person in her view. But yeah, so he hears Dylan trying to say, I'm in control. I'm in control of my story. We want to believe that I'm not destined to do this. I'm not destined to have this lot in life. And yet he is still looking at these quote unquote signs, these coincidences, however you want to put it, that lead him to where he is. And you wonder if he's starting to believe that, yeah, there's an exceptionalism to him, that he was chosen to do this task. It's his responsibility to rid the world of these people,
Right. So it's a guy who wholesale rejects fate and leans heavily on serendipity, which I would think are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And it all comes down. Yeah. It really comes down to the way you're looking at it. Because in my mind, they're the same thing. Because the idea of,
I wouldn't draw a hard distinction between those. But
like that, like what's the difference between like if you come to a fork in the road, what's the difference between choosing to go left and being predetermined to go left? The only difference is if you don't know it's predetermined, you're still,
right. Which we got into in Paper Girls.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like there should be a little footnote here. See Paper Girls Volume 1 discussion.
Yeah. You're still making a choice there. And does it matter if it's predetermined or not? Dylan, I think.
Well, the question is, whether
Dylan
it matters.
Would say yes.
Yeah. The question is, does it matter if it's the illusion of choice or it's an actual choice?
Yes.
And if you're going through the same sensory process either way, what's the difference?
Yeah. But I think Dylan would argue it makes a big difference because he wants to feel like he's in control, that in his mind, these are serendipitous things. This is coincidence, versus the people who would say no such thing as coincidences, that things happen for a reason. But I think Dylan would reject that because he doesn't want to cede that control. He wants to feel like he's making these choices because I think he wants to, in his mind, it elevates himself that I'm doing these things. I'm choosing to do them. And I am, making, actually it jumps ahead to a little bit to the sixth issue there. We'll come back to 5 a little, but something that the detective Lily Sharp says, that one of the colleagues in the media says, why are you so hot to go after this guy? What's this guy about? And Sharp says, well, you can read in a very kind of condescending way, is that, she's going after him because this guy thinks he's the good guy. And that offends her, even though he's going after quote unquote bad people. And I think that's spot on for a read of Dylan, that he doesn't want to believe that this is predestined or fate. He has to believe that he's choosing to do this, demon or not. He has to believe at his core that I am choosing to go out and kill these people because I'm making the world a better place. That because I'm killing bad guys. These are people who deserve it, who didn't get the judgment, who didn't get the punishment they should have gotten. And he has to believe he's making that choice because he does believe he's a good guy, because I don't think he can carry on if he thought he was just a pawn in some larger scheme. Even though the demon told him, you got to do this or you're going to die. He has to maybe delude himself, into thinking that I'm the good guy. This is my choice. I'm doing this. And that's the only way maybe he can sleep soundly at night and live what amounts to a quote unquote normal life after going down and gunning people out in public.
And by the way, we do get, he's determined to make himself exceptional. Even like, I think he has always considered his mind to be exceptional, but he just has bad breaks, bad lucks. He's got a bad past or whatever.
Yeah.
But after the first arc, the bad encounter at the end of it with the Russians, he is now going to do a little bit more of the hero's journey, even though he's an anti-hero. Yeah. He's going to the boxing gym, right? He's working out. And I love that it shows him like he's in the gym, and then just a few pages later, he's at a cafe with Kira, and he's not just instantly cut. He doesn't look like Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth immediately.
Yeah.
Still looks like a guy. He's like, hey, he's a guy. He's in a little better shape now. He's doing some cardio. He's building some muscle. He's learning how to throw a punch. But he's still a normal guy.
Still a dude.
There's no super soldier serum. Just a crazy demon possessing him. Totally normal stuff.
Maybe not possessing him, but
yeah. Well, it's actually more of a possession. Yeah, it's a self-possession.
It's influencing him. But yeah, he's still a dude. Nothing has changed other than his mindset has changed, because now he believes this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is now his quest, his mission. This is his Batman making his vow to rid the world of crime. This is him saying this is my path now, and he now believes it. And I think this is the fallout from what we saw in the first arc, where the first guy he goes and kills is the guy who he was pretty certain was molesting his childhood friend.
Right.
Then by killing that guy, it didn't come back onto him. No one ever looked into him, and it exposed this child pornography ring, and brought down all these other people. And so he's looking at that and being like, hey, I did this thing, and it led to so many other better things, and yeah, there's a little screw up with the Russian there, but he sees that there's a potential for, I do this thing and like better things happen, which means I'm doing the right thing. So yeah, again, you're right about him being on that hero's journey, because again, he thinks he's the hero. He thinks he's the good guy, but he's still going out and killing people. And we start seeing, as we move through this volume here, we start seeing how the ripples of that make their way out into the world at large, into society at large, as we start seeing how it has an effect on Kira, has an effect on the police, which we haven't had a conflict with them yet. We haven't seen them yet. All we've seen is Dylan scrolling on his phone,
right,
desperately worried that there's going to be some sort of thing where they're looking for. Yeah.
I think I mentioned this in volume 1, that I loved it, especially in volume 1 as a contained arc, that you only had the keyhole view of the world. You only saw what Dylan saw. And and it was just great. And by the way, the demon had kind of stopped showing up. Like as soon as he did the bidding, it kind of went away.
As long as he was doing the thing. Yeah.
Except here we start to see in issue 5, it still comes in whispers to him, but they're different whispers. Just look at you now, Dylan. You're not even the same person anymore.
Yeah.
It's not even a struggle anymore. You already feel righteous, don't you?
Frankly, it becomes the voice in the back of his head now. Yeah.
Which to me, okay, now I'll remind listeners, I have not read volumes 3 and 4. To me, I'm guessing this voice, if we were to ever be able to hear it, would sound a lot like his father, because we got that great reveal at the end of volume 1 that, oh my God, this demon is something his father depicted, which could mean two things. It could mean his father was visited by the same demon, meaning the demon is real, yada, yada. Or it could mean he saw this, forgot he saw it, which we actually find out is the case here in volume 2. And therefore, okay, so I just thought of a question as I'm saying all of this. Okay, here's my problem. He's telling this whole story from a future point by which he would know whether the demon is real or he's crazy, and he's still maintaining this demon story.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how far in the future. It could be the beginning of, volume 3 is where we pick up in real time or something like that. But as of whenever he's narrating this to whoever he's narrating it to, this is still his story. He's still sticking with it. And with his new found confidence, swagger, physical skill, whatever, he also meets a new girl.
Oh, who's actually an old girl.
Re-meets a girl. Yes.
Yeah.
But he's a new man. So it's
Yes.
like the new reborn version of him meets her.
Mhm.
And he's just so much more impressive. Meanwhile, he gets his mark on Barry Jameson.
Yep. Again, the idea that a serendipitous meeting with an ex-girlfriend leads to them going to a coffee shop nearby, which leads to this being the same coffee shop cafe that Barry Jameson goes to all the time. And this is someone, who, again, we talked about the echoes of the real world. This is, in reference back to the financial crash 2008 and all of that. This is someone, again, who, Dylan believes was, he escaped punishment. He got off easy. He destroyed lives, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of lives.
Which will make the police take it that much more personally, because not only is he okay, so the child molesting, he caught that before the police did.
Yeah.
This one, police failed to administer justice.
The dog poisoner, like, again, cops aren't busting down doors for that. That
Right.
seems like a smaller problem. But yeah,
one was off their radar. One was too small for them.
And
this one escaped.
Also, we got the Russian, the guy in the Russian strip club who, again, random Russian gets killed. Probably not breaking the news, but yeah, this is super high profile. This is someone who was tried and got what they say, he got 3 or 4 years in like a super cush white collar prison or whatever it was. Basically not even a slap on the wrist. But again, this is high profile. This is someone that someone whose death would make news. He's not a no one, a random bad guy. So this is a step up in target. And I don't think that registers at all for Dylan. The idea that it's not just bad people, but the profile of who the person is, that this one act, not just because as soon as he kills him in the bathroom, there happen to be cops right there. That obviously increases the heat, but I don't think he had the foresight, into thinking, well, this was a high profile case that the world forgot about, as he mentions, but still his death would have then reawoken, his murder would reawaken these news stories and the headlines. So I don't think he thought that through. Maybe, at this point he's, feeling himself a little too much. He's a little too proud, because again, it's kind of rendered moot because there happen to be cops right then and there when it happens. Right. And that throws his life for a loop. But even if they weren't there, I think this would have drawn the kind of similar attention that he ends up getting anyway, which obviously isn't something that he had been looking for. And this thing he was worried about all throughout the first arc. The idea that they would start looking for suspects and really hunting down, trying to solve the murder part, as opposed to what they were focused on, which was the exposure of the child pornography ring. That the murder became less important than what they found later. This is a case where the murder would have been number one.
Oh, absolutely.
And
it's not like people wouldn't have been like, there's probably even a populist movement that would celebrate this man's death and the way it was done.
Definitely.
So he's making himself a bit of a hero.
Yeah. Well, there's and
I
think
not great at the getaway though.
No,
I have to say that.
well, again, with the, the cop seeing right there kind of made things tougher for him, because that meant there were direct witnesses, and the idea of him being in a black hoodie and a red mask, this gives some identification, which then trails him throughout this arc. But yeah, jumping into the cab and doing all that. Again, he is kind of feeling himself, because who does he call? He ends up calling Rex, his mobile drug dealer, and tells the cab, hold on, let me make a call, and then drop me off at this random location. And he jumps out of the cab and into an unmarked white van. Like, that's super weird, and of course,
and he's laughing maniacally in the back of the cab, which is I have a hard time picturing the Avengers getting back in the Quinjet after a bloody battle and just laughing like maniacs.
Well, and especially
not something heroes do.
And this is a guy who his hero work is specifically to kill someone. He is murder. He is not stopping crime or helping people. He is specifically murdering people. And yeah, he gets back into that cab, and he's on this like super crazy adrenaline endorphin rush. He's feeling great. And he even tells Rex in the van, like, he's not asking for his quote unquote his prescription, his usual. He wants something to celebrate, because that's how he's feeling. And of course, the end result is, after he meets Rex, he sends a text or a call to Daisy, and they hook up that night, because he's just riding so high on feeling so great about what he did. And what he did was point a shotgun at a random dude in the bathroom and murder him. That's right. That's what he's celebrating. That's what he's so.
That's the high point of his life. Yes.
Yeah. That's he's so amped up for that, and it does make you wonder, like again, you're meant to question, what kind of person is this?
Yeah. Can you imagine if this was the entry point into the story? If this was volume one, I don't think you know how to feel with him. He's a little more sympathetic because of volume one.
I think that's what, again, it's all about laying that track for the character. We see him struggle with it early, and you mentioned the hero's journey. The hero's journey of Dylan as an anti-hero. We see him struggle early on, trying to come to grips with what his mission is, and now he's embraced it. It's just that mission is terrible. That mission is murdering people, and because we saw him be so resistant to the demon's charge, I can't kill people. What are you doing? But we saw him, if he didn't do it towards the end of the month, his body would start breaking down. He'd be physically debilitated, and then he kills someone and all of a sudden feels better. So again, you're meant to question whether it's real or psychosomatic.
Right. And the whole notion that he resisted the demon for a while is the story he's spinning to make himself sympathetic to whoever he's sharing this with.
Yeah. Yeah.
He may have leaned wholly in, but that's what would make him an unreliable narrator. But anyway, this is
you're supposed to question, is it real? Is it psychosomatic? It doesn't matter. He believes it's real. And by telling you that I didn't do this, I was starting to die, so I had to do this. That's why I did this. That's why I'm killing these people, and that's why I'm killing bad people. Again, it's all about his delusion that he's the good guy. And yeah, maybe he's feeling himself a little too much, because even if you're the good guy, probably shouldn't be celebrating so hard that you just murdered a dude,
Right. I could see it being a dark
hubris
thing where he's recluse afterwards and, mourns for the loss of life or something like that.
Kind of the extreme version of Batman. If Batman were someone
Batman
who
had
murdered
to kill
people,
someone every week or every month.
He would still be very mopey and mournful and emo about it. He would sit and brood in the Batcave and just have to constantly convince himself, like, this is why I did it. I did the right thing, blah, 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 blah. Dylan is like, no, man, I'm good. I need something to take the edge off.
Drugs, get a girl.
I need something to come down from, because I'm too high right now. The adrenaline was too high. I got to celebrate and chill out. But that kind of hubris that he has, that leads, that's when the world starts to expand, where Brubaker and Phillips start to again see those ripples move out into the larger world, because at issue 6 is we're really starting to see the law enforcement now, and that's where we get introduced to to Detective Lily Sharp. You know, and you know, she's the one person that is starting to hone in on the idea that, wait, maybe these seemingly random killings are connected, you know,
Right.
by no other, you know, it starts off with the idea that it's the same type of gun. They can't match the ballistics. They just know that it's a 38 special, and which is like super flimsy in terms of a connection. But she's seeing past that and being like, well, we got this this child molester, we got this dog poisoner, we got this Russian mobster, and now we got this corrupt investment banker. These are all bad people, you know? So she's seeing past that and seeing the underlying kind of motif and the theme when no one else does, you know? And,
Right.
and it's a juxtaposition, I think, of the law enforcement of, you know, yeah, what would they do? You know, it's
Well, I mean, here's the thing that got me with the whole Lily Sharp thing. So we get this detective, you know, people are kind of gaslighting or whatever.
Yeah.
And this was maybe my favorite thing of this volume. And it's a Brubaker hat trick. Everything that our narrator is telling us about Lily Sharp is he says he said. Meaning everything he knows about Lily Sharp, he's getting from an informant.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? Does he eventually have an ally in the police department? Does he find someone that's willing to pass him information on the detective? Because, you know, he's not saying, oh, when I met Lily Sharp or when I looked into her, I found out this. He keeps saying, you know, he said this about her. And I'm like, this is the most important he of the story so far. I didn't write down a page number, but the pages aren't numbered anyway, because, you know, the art is just spilling off every square inch of paper. Oh yeah. So there's the one where she's at the top of the page. He says, so what? You're saying they're all linked because of some common type of ammo. And in the right-hand column in the middle of the page, it said, he said she was massaging the evidence to say what she wanted it to say.
Oh, no,
that was him. No, that was her boss.
Yeah, it's her boss. Yeah. No, I think
I was thinking there was another instance, but
no, see,
I could have totally misread that.
Yeah. So if you keep going back through there, the scene where, like the morning after scene where Dylan and Daisy are in bed, that text box starts with, and yes, obviously I didn't know that was all happening at the time, but sometimes it's important for you to know stuff that I wasn't there for. So let's call it artistic license. So what he's saying there,
he's fabricating a bit.
Yeah. What he's, well, not fabricating, maybe he is, this is information he's learned later, and he's telling the story from a future standpoint, or he's kind of positing, saying that I know what happens at the end, so here's kind of what I think probably happened in the meantime. So he's kind of narrating the idea of, here's what based on what I know now, here's what I think the steps were getting us to that point.
Yeah, because even when we're following someone else, it's still Dylan narrating it.
Yes, up until
the Kira story.
Yeah, up until issue 7. Yeah. So
yeah,
but no, it's real quick. The issue 6 is an interesting. The idea of, you know, what this is putting forward is the idea of what would law enforcement reaction be? Because again, Detective Sharp is like, this guy's killing people, we got to stop him, and the chief is kind of like, what? So you want to say there's a serial killer out there that's murdering quote unquote bad people? And, you know, and he's not wrong about the idea of, if you just put out there's a serial killer, like whatever you say after that, no one's going to hear, you know? And it's almost like he's content to be like, well, let him work, you know, let him do his thing. Whatever. If he's really killing, if he really is a serial killer and he really is targeting bad people, it's almost like, let him do it, you know?
Right.
It's like
out of his way.
Yeah. It's kind of like he's quietly condoning the actions just by just not pursuing it. But yet there is, you know, Detective Sharp is, you know, she kind of, we see her now. She's like the one good cop in the precinct of bad cops. And, you know, we see towards the end of this issue that, you know, she leaks this information, this idea of the red mask killer. She leaks the information to the press because they wants to put pressure on an investigation, you know. But before we follow up on that, yeah, we jump into this kind of this other issue, this Kira focused issue, this
right.
this
Yeah.
kind
So
of
let's
side
just
story.
jump there because I think
Yeah.
we've covered everything up until there. And I think I was telling you before we signed on, I was not a big fan of this issue. I felt like the backstory was kind of boring. There were no great revelations in there. It's basically what I would have expected, what we kind of already had depicted. I do like the counseling session, mostly because I just love, I love those panels. Like I just love,
yeah, those
this,
are really, really cool. Yeah.
I love the close-ups, all the texture on the hair, but I love the 4x3 grid across 2 pages.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something very cool about, on the left-hand page, it's Kira on the left, therapist on the right. And then on the right-hand page, it is therapist on the left, Kira on the right. So they mirror each other where the therapist is always on the inside of the page towards the spine and Kira is both on the outside. I like that. Just juxtaposition. I like that.
And you go
framing.
2 pages later and they flip it.
And they flip it.
But then when there's a break in the conversation and the mother comes up, not only do they switch spots, but the bottom left panel is not in the white framing.
Yes.
It's just like, this is an insane amount of artistry for something that you have to produce monthly.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I just can't get over.
And again, it's all these pages here. These are they're talking head pages, but yet you're right on that last page. When we shift to the mother, the one panel is not there. That's kind of the third splash page. It's just now we see them both together in the room, and it's just about it gives the reader a beat. There's a pause there, and you feel the silence. You feel the weight of the silence in the room before Kira answers back. So yeah, I agree. It's strange in the moment in terms of stepping out away from Dylan's story, because yeah, it's narrated all by Kira, and you get that in terms of the lettering changes. It goes to this different style for both the text boxes and the narration next to the photographs. That's kind of the storytelling motif in this issue here. And I think it sets things up for Kira to have a better understanding, because she will come and play a larger role going down the line. So there's a little bit of foreshadowing there. That's just for both you and everyone reading along who hasn't read ahead. It's about setting up Kira and just getting a little more into her and understanding her more, and her deeper in her relationship, with Dylan, and in specifics in this to the story, she kind of, when she's hiding in his closet, sees his meds and realizes that he's not taking meds. He's just taking like recreational drugs instead of his actual meds there. So there's a story aspect to it as well. But I think the focus on Kira is about advancing her character and setting her up so we have a more familiarity with her down the line. So yeah, it does feel a little out of place now, but it is kind of like a breather in the middle of this, in this arc, middle of these issues. You get a little break, you get a little respite from the story, and we just get kind of a little side story, and then before we jump back in, this came to me. Did you ever watch Scrubs?
I actually didn't.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I tried a couple times, but I was like jumping in like midway and late, and I was getting the heavy drama ones.
This reminds me weirdly of Scrubs. So every episode of Scrubs is titled My Something, like My First Day, My Last Day, My Musical, My Best, whatever it is. And because they're all narrated by Zach Braff's character JD, he's doing voiceover narration through every episode. But as the show went on, every so often they'd have a different episode that was called like His Story 1, Her Story 2, things like that, where the narration in that episode would hand off to a different character. Like maybe it would go to Sarah Chalk's character Elliot, and she would narrate the story in that world, but from her point of view. And it was just a way to change up the storytelling aspect, because same people, same story, same hospital, a lot of stuff, but just getting a different perspective, focusing on a different character. And they do that every so often. They did a handful of times across the run of the show. And thinking about this now, this reminds me of that, where like Dylan hands off the narration, the storytelling aspect to a different character, it's his best friend, and or kind of at this point like ex best friend. They're kind of on the outs right now, because Dylan's on the outs with everybody, but just kind of a different perspective, a different view of the world. Because again, I think that's the overall theme of this arc. We're seeing Dylan's actions from the outside world, both from the police standpoint and the pressure and society there. And now we're also seeing how this has affected Kira. This is the person he was closest with, and he was seeing, and the fallout from that is he is now even on less good terms with his roommate Mason, because her and Kira broke up, but Dylan's also not seeing Kira. So we're seeing how Dylan's journey is now affecting Kira, and we're getting this from her point of view now. So this is not what Dylan is thinking about, what Kira is thinking about him. This is what Kira is thinking about Dylan. And I think that's an important distinction in this moment, that because again, what we just talked about with the police, Dylan doesn't know what's going on with the police. He's kind of guessing at that, kind of putting pieces together in hindsight. This is Kira telling us this is what her life is like right now, what she's thinking, what she's experiencing. And so I think it is set up for things to come down the line, for things that we're going to see with Kira and her importance in the story. So it's kind of a nice breather right in the middle of all the other action.
Totally. Yeah. And I definitely had that sense of relief. And I felt like it confirmed my read of Kira, because
how so?
So you don't know if the things Dylan is telling you, like Dylan kind of senses like, well, she's kind of into me, but there's, she comes from all this baggage, and like he suspects a lot of things about her, and that's been our only window into her.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah. And
like in the first arc, he's talking about how he thinks the reason they're friends is because they're both kind of had screwed up childhoods, kind of broken families, broken homes, and they're both kind of broken people, and so that's why they're together. Yeah, right. You're right.
And without paying attention, I took that as gospel,
sure,
which you absolutely should not do from this narrator.
Yeah,
and I know
at
that.
The time, but you're right. But at the time, you only have one source. And
right, so that's your only option.
Yeah, you have to believe that for now. But yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. But now we get Kira talking about herself, and now we know this is the definitive. And you have that versus what we got from Dylan in the first arc.
And it's more interesting. Okay. So I'm coming around on it. It is more interesting to have specific details rather than to just say, oh, she had a messed up past.
Yeah.
And so she's going to be kind of a messed up character because she had a messy past.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not really interesting. That's not really original. All you knew from her past is that her parents had orgies at the house.
Yeah.
Massive orgies.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the husbands. That was one of her mom's.
Right.
I think
it was a phase.
It was a phase. Yeah.
But even still, as a kid, to just see, I don't know if the picture was an exaggeration, but it was just like wall to wall naked bodies.
Yeah. Like maybe potentially 2 or 3 deep, like stacked on top.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
just naked bodies as far as you can see all over the floor. Yeah. That'd probably be pretty traumatizing for a child. And as Dylan says there, that will pretty assuredly mess you up on your thoughts on love and intimacy and things of that nature. If you saw that as a child.
Right. And it's Dylan who says that. So Dylan can recognize that other people's childhoods impact their present.
Yeah.
Seems but like he's not reconciled much with his own.
And I think we get to that. It's so after the Cure issue, 8, 9, and 10, I feel kind of they kind of run together in terms of their messaging, but somewhere in there.
It's funny that you said that, because I did not distinguish those in my notes.
Yeah,
everything I'd say about that is one continuous thing.
That's very much about, again, facing the idea of consequences. That's where Dylan is first starting to face consequences, real consequences of his actions, not just getting beat up outside the strip club by the Russian. This is real consequences. But somewhere in there, when he's with Daisy, Daisy asks about, oh yeah, your father died when you were young, right? And he's like, yeah, he had a heart attack. And the narration goes to like, I don't know why I lied to him, because we find out that what actually happened is he took his own life. And he starts talking about that because Kira knows that about him. Kira knows the truth. He didn't lie to Kira about that as when they were friends or together. But yet here's this woman, Daisy, who he is in a relationship again with. So someone he had been with before and is now with again. And yet he can't tell her the truth because there's a part of him that is still suppressing and denying the effect his childhood had on him. Because you're right. He can see the stuff that happened with Kira having an effect on her, and he can psychoanalyze her, but God forbid he does it to himself.
Right.
He is not that. Yeah, he had a pretty screwed up childhood because his dad felt like he was a failure and then eventually took his own life. And now, maybe there's a connection as to why he has some issues with mental health and depression, and maybe he makes that connection. But in terms of how that effect is and what that specific effect might be, I think you're totally right. He is blind to that in his own life, yet he's pretty quick to point it out in Kira's. So it's not like he can't see it. It's like he's actively suppressing it in himself.
Yeah. Which is why I'm so curious about the first page of volume 3, because volume 2, he really has to confront whatever impact that was.
You mentioned that earlier, and I think that's the great symmetry. Volume 1 ends with us, the reader, seeing that painting and seeing the demon. And now, so we are now reading. We are reading volume 2. We have that knowledge, and then volume 2 ends with Dylan seeing that picture. And now you're like, oh, okay, so now Dylan and the reader are on the same page now. We've all caught up to the same knowledge, and he sees that, oh my God, that's the demon. My dad drew that. And so, yeah, and this comes after these 3 issues of all these consequences building up there, in issue 8, kind of the main thing is now it's been leaked. They're looking for this red mask killer here. And he has this comment, how it's like going back to stop and frisk, except it's 100 times worse.
Right.
And now they're looking for white dudes in their 20s and 30s wearing hoodies and bandanas, as opposed to what stop and frisk was in reality back in the day, which was them just shaking down people of color. So there's this inverse thing of how, what law enforcement had the same reaction you would think they did, but because of who the alleged perpetrator is, now they're going after different people. They're looking after white guys in hoodies, not black guys in hoodies.
Yeah, but I love that the newspaper stand guy doesn't really believe in this vigilante.
Oh yeah, totally.
And it really pisses off Dylan.
Yeah.
He's got very thin skin for a serial killer.
There's that bit of pride in there, that you like. Well,
everybody's a critic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that he it's that exceptionalism again, and he's feeling that this is what I'm supposed to do, and he still is feeling he's maybe still above consequences, but but they start to pile up, and that first real consequence is Rex, a guy who you're still even uncertain if he's even considering him a friend. He does consider him a friend, but like in reality,
I don't think he knows Dylan's name, right? He has a number assigned for him.
And that's the whole point. That was part of his operation. He may know his no last names, no physical address. He just has a customer number, like a customer ID number. That's how Rex ran his mobile drug business. But yeah, I don't know if Rex would consider, he probably doesn't consider Dylan a friend, but Dylan feels so badly about this. And Dylan doesn't have a whole lot of friends. He does consider Rex to be like a friend, even though he's really just his drug dealer, and I'm sure Rex just thought he's nothing to do, another guy, another customer, but him being roped into Dylan's situation, as it were, getting roped into the situation that stems from the Russian mob, how that backfires, and Dylan feeling so guilty about that. Because again, we're pretty certain that it was his bullet when he fired back into the van. It was his bullet that hit Rex that ultimately killed him. But at this point, Dylan actually tries to do the right thing by taking Rex to the hospital. Of course, he puts on the red mask, the same ski mask, and drops off at hospital, and then drives off, and then Rex ends up dying. And now it's like, well, this is the dude that the police are looking for, right? And he just got caught on camera dropping a guy off that was shot to the hospital, who died anyway.
Massive blunder.
It's a huge mistake,
but it's a compound mistake because Rex was in that situation because of him, and because he wasn't smart enough to plan a getaway vehicle after shooting a man in a stall with a shotgun. Maybe have a plan for step 2.
Not just going out the window into an alley. It's
just crazy.
And it's all these compounded blunders, I think, because again, he was feeling himself a little too much. And then when the consequences got real, like not just that it was, hey, he's a police sketch that kind of maybe looks like him if you put a ski mask on, is on the front page of the paper. Like those aren't consequences to him. The consequences are, oh wait, I've now led to the unintentional death of someone that in Dylan's mind is a good person. He's talking about, as he talks to when the demon comes back to him.
He has a little bit of a freak out when he doesn't have his pills. And this guy is the source of that. So it's like, I think he has genuine affection for the guy.
Yes.
But he also needs this guy.
There's also a selfish need. But and we see at the, and again, we see afterwards when the demon does reappear, and Dylan's like, dude, Rex was a part of this. This guy had a family. He was blah, 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 blah. And the demon's like, they all had families. Like, what do you care? Everyone you've killed has a family, but why is this guy different? And he's, in Dylan's mind, it is different because he feels like Rex was an innocent, and again, this guy's a drug dealer. And, I'm not here to demonize people who take drugs, but it's like,
no, but he said earlier on in volume 1 that he wasn't going to go after drug dealers because he was like,
they're doing, they're providing a service, whatever it is, of doing what they can to get by. That's how it is.
Then he said it would be like an easy way to mask racism. It would be like, I'm going to go after drug users.
Exactly.
It was an interesting moral stand from him, but as he's coming home from all the frisking and stuff, he's back on his dates.
With Daisy.
With Kira in the room. We know that he doesn't.
Yes.
He starts thinking of Kira, and probably my favorite page in the book is when he's in the diner with her afterwards, and all of her caption bubbles are blank.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Because he can't hear it. And I'm like, I've been there, like where you're just so in a haze, so out of it, or so like in your own head. That everything kind of just feels like your life feels like a montage, and you can't remember what anyone said anywhere until he's snapped out of it by the cops killing a fake vigilante. Or shooting a fake one.
Or I think beating him up is what it was. I think that's what it was. Yeah, they like broke his arms and legs and all that stuff. They really kind of beat the crap out of him. But I agree. That is also my favorite part in this, because it's a simple storytelling technique, and it's so relatable, and you get it all the way, that she's talking, she's going, and Dylan is just, he can't get his mind right. He can't be present until it becomes about him, this idea that, when Mace is like, hey, come here, see the thing, it's he's wrapped up in his own thing. He can't hear what Daisy's saying, and what snaps him out of it is someone basically talking about him, or the person that should be him. And that's what brings him to. And that's such a great visual depiction of that.
And it's textbook narcissism.
Oh, totally.
But then
totally.
he's on to the next target. And now he's spending weeks at a time to research because he's increasing paranoia. Which is an interesting point to hit in probably issue, I don't know, 8 or 9, wherever we are, out of 20, it seems like ice seems like it's getting really thin underneath you there, my guy.
Yeah.
And we're not even halfway through this adventure.
Or
so
just we're coming up on halfway through, and he's already done this 4 times now that we know of, 4 times, and now he's super paranoid, trying to cover all of his bases because
and yet he's going for bigger and bigger targets every time.
Higher profile people.
If he was smarter, he would start shopping outside the city, you know, get on a train to Connecticut, go kill someone bad up there, come back down to New York,
go out maybe not where his mom lives, but because they could maybe tie to him there. But yeah, that he's going for bigger and bigger, higher profile people. It's almost like he's doing that because he feels maybe the more research he can get on them, the more sure he can be this person deserves it, you know? And even then though, but we see his approach is like super clumsy, you know?
Oh yeah. This is twice.
Yeah.
Twice he's approached his high value target with 2 police nearby.
Yeah.
Now the diner one was inexcusable. I guess he couldn't have known the police were out there.
Yeah.
But if he found out the police were out there and decided to shoot this dude anyway, you've been studying him. You know, he goes there every day. Wait one more day.
Yeah.
Don't put off this life or death thing until the end of the month.
You're in the open park there. You see what's there. Again, he had been hiding in the bathroom. So yeah, you can see how he doesn't know that the cops are right outside there. But yeah, this target here, it's super, super clumsy, you know, and yet he feels like he's maybe being like super clandestine, you know, super incognito. And yet it's just like, it's bungled from like every aspect from the go with this one. And obviously he doesn't get the kill, you know?
Right.
You know, he gets chased off.
He's throwing away his sweatshirt again. His sweatshirt budget's going through the roof.
Yeah, you know, those don't look
super
stuff
all the time.
I was going to say they don't look super expensive, but again, he is a grad student, so probably
a grad student in New York City. Yeah.
Not a
he's
whole
not
lot
paid rent.
Yes, true. Yeah.
So
even in a rent control apartment, so it's not like it's going through the roof. But he's got a, you know, he's not getting better at this, and yet I think he thinks he is by doing.
Oh my God, he's so sure he is, and
but he's clearly not getting better at this.
Yeah, and just more and more people are onto him each time.
Yeah,
and then he gets lured into a trap and just walks blindly into it. So, and that's the end of that story. He's walking away from this just cluster that he's created, and gets a phone call, you know, from a guy with a gun to his head, setting a meeting time. Well, and the next issue, it's just him walking straight into it.
Because that feeds into, he had called Rex earlier, left a message, because obviously doesn't know Rex is currently being held hostage, but it's the same. It mirrors what happens at that cafe where he has an encounter where he's trying to do his mission, fulfill his mission there, and when he's done, go meets Rex to blow off some steam and get a refill on his prescription, on his drugs. Well, this one fails, and Rex happens to call back. Oh, perfect timing, you know?
Right.
You know, I just tried this thing, I screwed it up, but I'll get better next time. Oh, but you know who's coming through? Rex is coming through for me right now. He's calling me back. Perfect timing. I'm going to go right and meet him. I'm going to get my prescription. I'm going to get right, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to get this guy when on my terms, and I'm feeling better. So he is continuing that idea of exceptionalism, that things are breaking his way. You know, that Rex calling him right then and there. Yeah, he's not thinking it's a trap. He has no idea. You know, none of this is a possibility for him, that this could be a problem. And as soon as he gets in the van, he realizes, oh, you know, misread that putt all the way.
Yeah. And frankly, I think the amazing thing to me here is that he wins this firefight with a professional, you know, someone who uses a gun a lot more than Dylan does.
Yes. Yeah.
That being said,
who's probably killed a lot more people than Dylan has.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But Dylan gets out of the car, and then it's fish in a barrel.
Yes.
It's actually fish in a barrel, because he also shoots. I assume it's his shot that hits Rex.
Rex says it was, and it also makes sense too, because the direction they were firing.
Right.
You know, the Russian was firing.
A ricochet.
Yeah. The Russian was firing out the back, and Dylan was firing from the back into the car, and Rex is sitting in the driver's seat, so it would make sense that it would have been one of Dylan's bullets.
Yeah. Now I don't want to victim blame here, but Rex, my guy,
get out of the car.
Get out of the car, hit the ground, crawl under the van.
Yeah. Get out of the way.
Like the bullets are going to be coming under the van.
But I think there's something to the idea again that, we don't see too much of that aftermath because of Rex's fate. But there again, this idea that Dylan just walked headfirst blind into a trap where he should have been dead. He should have been dead,
right,
without question. And yet he comes out on top and kills another bad dude, kills what he previously an innocent. But yeah, he didn't get the mark he had been scouting, but like Russian mobster, like the guy the Russian mob sends to do their wet work, like that would qualify as a bad dude.
And this guy's not immediately dead. That was interesting to me. Is that he has to finish the job in a personal way that he has not had to do.
Right up front, looking right at the guy.
Where the person knows who he is.
Yeah.
He has to look him in the eye.
Yeah. A guy who was he would have died anyway eventually, sitting there, but he finishes him off.
Sure.
Yeah, very personal.
But yeah, it was always impersonal. It was with the mask on, or he says like hey to his friend's brother, but his friend's brother didn't recognize him immediately or anything
and
like
that. I think that's just so the guy was looking at him. I think that was get his attention.
Right.
Make sure
it wasn't like, hey, recognize me. It was, hey,
and turn this way.
I've never done this before.
And then exactly. Turn this way. And then he shoots him in the face or the eye or whatever, and then goes. But yeah, this Russian guy is probably the worst guy he's actually killed. Like in terms of, again,
of minimizing casualties. So like, I always
this guy's got a body count that's huge. It has to be.
So I love both the Batman quote and the refutation of it, when Batman says, if you kill a killer, the number of killers in the world is the same. It's a hauntingly beautiful quote when he says it in the context he says it in. But any troll on the internet will tell you like, well, if you kill 2 killers, then you've only increased it's a net gain of 1 in terms of decreasing the killers. And so, you've killed this guy who kills a bunch of guys, and now Dylan has killed multiple people. So he's not increased the number of killers.
No. So again,
now you could say violence spawns violence, and killing killers will create more killers, and yada yada. But it's a complex thing. But what would Batman say?
Yeah, well, again, Dylan's killing people using guns.
Dylan would have no functional bones left in his body. If Batman were around,
Bruce he'd break every single bone.
Well,
full body cast.
He would have caught this guy after the second killing, no problem. Like he would have the detective skills. He would piece this together. He would not be bound by the.
No, he might have been after that first one, man. He might have been after the first one. He would have linked that guy, yes, to the child porn ring, but he would have gone back to the younger brother who took his life later on and worked his way back. There's no question.
But that's the other side of this. That's the other side of this story is that yes, he's not a superhero. He's a realistic character, but so are the police.
Yes.
There's they don't have a supercomputer, and they can't just say, run the magic program on the computer that'll, piece all these clues together and fix it for us.
There's one detective who we know is on the right track because she's piecing things together, and she's running into just bureaucratic red tape of being a police officer,
Right, but she's running highly off of intuition. I don't think you could. Listen, no one could just lay these pieces out and say this is obviously everything that's happening.
100%. And I'm not saying her colleagues and the chief are wrong. I'm saying that we, the reader, we obviously know she's right. So we know her intuition is right, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that you would take that evidence to your higher ups and your higher ups saying what they would probably say, which is essentially what her chief says, is that I'm not saying you're wrong. You might be right, but you don't have enough now to prove that you're right. So it doesn't matter if you are. Everything you're saying is conjecture. In the end, you might be right, but you can't go with this now because you don't have enough to back it up, which is why she ends up leaking it to the press and forcing the hand of the department. But yeah, I don't think she's like the chief isn't being an obstructionist. He's not being unreasonable. I think it's a real world say, because when you look at all the evidence, I think he's right. There is no connection other than a gut feeling. And in fictional stories, the gut feeling that's what drives the cops. That's what drives the hero, right? And it's always correct. And again, so we, the audience, know that she's right, but the challenges that she faces and her decision to leak the story, again, we know that ends up being the right thing, but those are things that are reasonable, that are real world comps of, yeah, she doesn't have enough to make a case. No judge would look at this and be like, yeah, this is good. Let's put a warrant out for this person that we have no idea who it is. You can't even guarantee it's the same person. You just think it's the same person.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think that's kind of the chief's role, is to say, like, look, you can chase your intuitions all you want. I'm going to tell you what the judge is going to tell you.
Yeah.
Which is that this is going to be another guy walking if you slap the cuffs on him too early.
Yeah. The chief is right. It actually would be irresponsible, and it actually kind of is irresponsible to leap to the conclusion based on what you know. It is irresponsible to say all of these are connected. This is the same person. This is some vigilante serial killer. That's actually the wild theory. That's not a reasonable conclusion, even though we know she's right about it. So yeah, the chief is being totally right, and not being intentionally obstructionist, but we are seeing, again, just a more grounded, a more real world approach. The police aren't wildly corrupt. The police aren't also wholly saint-like, they're not perfect.
But they're practical. Yeah. I mean, they're like, the criticism you can have of them is that they're pragmatists, but they're in the stereotypical cop movie where it's like, oh, the chief's holding me back or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
She'd be out there with that burnt down van by herself and maybe a partner. They've got a full forensics crew out there. Like, they're taking this seriously. They're going by the book. They're doing what you do.
They're taking,
when you want to catch the person and book them.
They're taking the crime scene seriously. The part that maybe they haven't been taking is they're connected. They're doing their job, and they're treating this as a suspicious death, a homicide, whatever it is. They're doing that part.
Ironically, they're seeing it as a collection of trees rather than a forest while they're in a forest.
Exactly.
Literally.
But again, that seems like the responsible way to go. Because this isn't the term that's in vogue now. This isn't propaganda. This isn't showing cops are great or cops are evil. I think this is about a neutral approach, as he's trying to say, just like, what kind of reaction would this set off? But also, I think it's important to note, and this goes back to what was talked about in issue 8 about the advanced stop and frisk, the idea that they're looking after a white guy now. I think there's some commentary in that, maybe in what's not being said, in that because they believe the alleged perpetrator, alleged serial killer, is white, is Caucasian, and not a person of color, that maybe the police are less likely to come down on this, Well,
I can assure you, when he's caught, the newspaper will read Lone Wolf.
Lone Wolf. Yeah,
that's the classic.
Seem like a good guy, quiet, kept to himself.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a lone wolf. It's a white guy.
But if this
which would be a great comic name, by the way, if we wrote a comic book called Lone Wolf, and it was
there's Lone Wolf and Cub, the great manga. But
yes, that's true. Frank Miller's a huge fan.
There is a sense though of if Dylan, or if the police suspected that this perpetrator were a person of color, that maybe if Detective Sharp goes to the chief and says, hey, look at these cases here, I think this is all the same guy. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to assume that if they thought it was a person of color, that they would immediately jump on it. But maybe because it's a white guy, he's getting that benefit of the doubt that this guy's not a serial killer. We don't have the connections there. And so I think that's kind of in the way I read it now. Maybe that's 2022 reading of it, but it's not something that I wouldn't put past Ed Brubaker putting into his scripts in terms of the things that aren't being said, that kind of commentary, that because he is a white guy, that there's even with the increased police presence of looking for people in hoodies and bandanas or whatnot, carrying backpacks, that there is still an element of privilege given to a potential white suspect versus a potential person of color.
I mean, and it's the very definition of privilege is, he's being treated as innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And it's not that we don't want him to have that. We want everyone to have that. But we rightly assume that it would not be the same treatment regardless of the person. Yes. And I think that Brubaker has baked enough racial undertones into this book that that's a perfectly fair, if not the intended reading.
It's definitely it's meant to be implied, I think. Yeah.
Because there have been racial comments at least 3 or 4, so it's not like a colorblind book.
No.
And not trying to be, even though most of your main characters are white.
Yeah, I think Dylan is aware with that stop and frisk line. He is aware that this is being treated differently because the perpetrator, aka him, the person they're looking for, is white. He is aware that by what he's saying, we know that he knows that the police are treating this differently, and maybe that's why the police why they slow played it initially. They slow played it initially because he was a white guy, and that gets the benefit of the doubt that this is not some serial killer that they need to put out there on Front Street, which is why Detective Sharp has to go and leak it in order to get any sort of traction. But yeah, I think it's within reason to assume that's something that's meant to be. I don't think that's meant to be the main text. I think that's meant to be.
No. Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to fixate on it.
Yeah.
But I think an aware reader can't miss it.
And it's definitely something now, reading in 2022 eyes, even, we're talking about a book that came out, this volume came out between January and July 2017. So looking back even just now, when we're reading it 5 years in the past, is something we're much more aware of now. So it would not have been as overt when he was writing it, but those subtextual points, I think, are much more clear to a 2022 audience.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even have time to get into the list of things that raise national awareness about these policing issues in span of time.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
which is why I think that there's an additional relevance to this story through that kind of subtext when you read it now, because again, you think about we just how in this arc how the suspect is treated by the police versus how a suspect of a different race would be treated. You can't help but see that in a current day, from a current day viewpoint, something that didn't exist as much when you read it as it was coming out. So it's one of those ways that this book has, I think, gained in relevance or stayed as relevant.
It was certainly less prominent on the average person's mind.
Yes.
Because I mean, I remember, when the Michael Brown shooting happened in St. Louis, and all of a sudden, my antennas reached a new level of noticing every headline across the country.
Yeah.
And I had several Black friends say, like, we're glad you're noticing now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Welcome. This has been something in our community our entire lives. We've never known any other status. But glad you're here for it now.
Let's not focus on getting here late. Let's focus on getting here at all.
Right. It's still like, to my shame.
It's still a process, and it's one of those things that, again, it's a way that this book, I think, stays relevant in terms of its reading, because you can read it now and have a slightly different perspective than when I read it in 2017, but still you still get the gist of it, and you can see again that subtext is so much clearer now, and you can, and it can invite conversation that maybe it wouldn't have back in 2017 when it came out. There's a deeper thing to look at. There are deeper issues here in terms of policing, in terms of how they would treat a situation like this if it were quote unquote happening in the real world. There's more things to explore and delve into now than there were, again, just 5 years ago. And it all ties into the idea of these consequences that are just they're just now starting to mount up for Dylan. It takes 4 killings, 4 murders, and the situation with the Russian mobster the Russian hitman and Rex for stuff to really hit the fan for him. We don't, right. So we assume that's if it's once a month, it's been at least 4 or 5 months now, right? Not even half a year for him, but he's been able to live with this and only now start feeling the consequence of it. He feels super guilty about Rex, and he goes to the funeral, he visits the grave,
which is where we pick up. There's like we're short on time, but we got like 4 mini beats left to hit.
Yeah, but the
funeral, compounded blunders. I mean, if there was a name for volume 2, it would be compound blunders.
Yes,
it's just letting each mistake dictate the next mistake in an unstoppable chain of just horrible decisions. And he's watched from the car, and he confronts the demon. And again, I say this demon sounds like the voice of his father. And I've never met his father. We've never seen him. But your friend sold poison to children. He did not. Yeah. Yes, he did. He deserved to be sacrificed on my altar. Shut up. I hate you. You don't hate me. You hate yourself. Isn't that like classic horrendous dad talk?
Yeah. Yes. That is the,
whether it's his dad or not, or projection of his dad. It's like,
you said the right word there.
Gosh.
You said the right word there in projection. That's exactly what it is, whether it is or not. That's the exact kind of wording, the phrasing, the tone, everything about that is disappointed father.
Right. So after the disappointed father, he goes immediately to his mother, who must be low-key disappointed in him.
Probably.
He's not very well developed as far as she can see, and she doesn't get to see him after the highs of his killing sprees. He just comes out there when he's looking for a gun or bummed out beyond ability to function.
He's only you get the sense that she understands he only comes out there when he's in a low place, when he needs something, and I'm sure she's happy for the visit, but he always masks it with his friends in New York, like, oh, I got to go and take care of my mom. But really, he's just going out there to hide. And I think his mom picks up on that.
Yeah. And then the scene in the attic, I love the demon high roading him on morality. Because he says, Rex had a family. Do you get what I've done? He's like, they all had families, everyone you killed so far, but you only care about this one. What kind of morality is that? Oh my gosh. Savage burn from a demon to a serial killer. What world is this?
Because it is Dylan's exceptionalism. He believes Rex is innocent, and so by his code, he didn't deserve to die, and he feels he's bearing all that guilt and all that shame. And yet, from the demon's perspective, is like, again, dude, he was a drug dealer. It doesn't matter if he was your drug dealer and you thought he was your friend. He was a drug dealer. He was not a good dude by the definition of what we think that is. Just because your twisted view of the world, because he was your drug dealer, you thought he was your friend, doesn't mean he was innocent. And that's more of Dylan trying to face or not facing the true nature of what he's doing. He doesn't grasp how this is changing him and what it's forcing him to confront. He refuses to. And the demon puts it right there on Front Street. And Dylan can't deal with it.
Well, and that's confrontation number 1. Yeah. He says he's quitting. Demon says, no, you're not.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
So, and that's confrontation 1. He gets confronted on his morality. Confrontation 2, Kira confronts him on his pills. And confrontation 3, just in rapid succession, everything he has coming unglued at the same time. He's trying to
all falls apart.
Quit being the killer. He's lost his drugs. He's lost his drug dealer. He's lost his secret from Kira. And then he goes to this art gallery and sees the horrifying image that he's been arguing with for 2 volumes now.
Yeah.
and it's just a masterstroke. And again, the parallel from the end of volume 1 to this is just nailed it.
It's a perfect way to end the arc. And I just think we talked about the compounding errors in this arc. Again, I mirror back to the first arc where it seemed like in that first arc, up until getting beat up by the random stripper from the Russian club, like every decision he made worked out okay. Try to kill himself, but he lived, and now he's under a demon spell. But okay, he kills the guy, and that works out all right. Everything. He gets with Kira. Something he's always wanted. He ends that arc. He ends that arc on a high note, and it seemed like everything he did was working out right, and that got him to the point into volume 2. And like you said, this volume is just nothing but screw up after screw up after screw up. And every time he messes up, it leads right into him messing up again and making it even worse. And then the next one makes it even worse and even worse. And he's just tumbling all the way down the hill until you're right. Those last 3 beats, just boom, 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 like just 3 whacks all the way down. And he, for what we can tell now, he's laying there at rock bottom. He's staring up at that painting from his dad, and he's seeing the demon in that painting.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it. I don't know about you, but I don't have bookmarks in terms of like a pithy quote.
No.
I mentioned a favorite panel, which would be the empty caption bubbles, and tons of stuff that I love. Yeah. But there's no one line where I can say, that's the thing that I always return to. This is one, and frankly, it's a pretty quick read. You can just sit down and reread the entire thing whenever you want to.
I think so too. Yeah, but I agree with you. The blank text bubbles, I think that's one of those things that you could only do, that only works in this format of storytelling. Because if you think about how that's done in live action TV, usually it's just someone will start talking and then.
Right. It'll turn into Peanuts teachers.
Yeah. All they do is drown out the audio. And so you get the sense, he's not hearing that, blah, blah, blah. But here, seeing it visually, it's so stark and it's so great. And you see it in multiple moments. They're sitting there at the diner, then they're walking down the street, so it's not just one conversation. It's like the whole conversation. Doesn't matter where they are. They're sitting, they're walking. He's not engaged with any of it. And to see it visually like that is one of those just like perfect comic moments that only happens in this medium when you have writers and artists working together like that. Yeah.
And probably in a close second, probably easier to imitate would be issue 7 with Kira, the counseling panels, which we also discussed.
Yeah. Again, great storytelling.
Using the spine of the book, for the positioning, and then using this 12 panel thing and breaking it on the 23rd of 24 panels.
Yeah. To give you that one beat, that one break. And because at that point you've been seeing them close up faces, panel, back and forth, whether one's on the inside of the page or the outside of the page, you're just going back and forth, the same headshot. And then that one panel, you see the distance, you see the relative space there. And again, the weight of that silence of Kira's pause before answering, you feel it right there. And it is so genius. I agree. Again, another one of those things that only really works in this medium,
Well, and really only works, I think, when you have a magical collaboration where the writer has created the specific mood and the setting, yet gives space to the artist to do some storytelling on their own. It's not just a dictation of whatever Brubaker said. There's space
and that's one where I wonder what the script says. When they got to that page, was it like maybe it was written like, because there's also a world where that page works down and that 23rd panel is just a silent Kira panel. The exact same headshot we've seen, but she doesn't say anything. And that's your beat. And then we go to the 24th panel with her answer to that last question about her mother, I believe. So maybe that's how it was written. And then this is Sean Phillips saying, no, what if we do something different? What if we zoom out and we see both of them together? And we see them both in the same space. Who knows how that works? But in the end, it comes through with just a great storytelling moment, again, that really only exists in this medium. And I think it's, again, you're right. It's the writer and the artist knowing each other and trusting that the thing we want to get across, the feeling we want to get across, it's gonna happen in the best way it can possibly happen. You know, the best possible version of this is what we're gonna get when these two guys work together. And I think that's an example of it, for sure.
Yeah, so that's my bookmark. So anyway,
Absolutely.
Thank you all for listening. You can find us on Facebook, where we never do anything, Twitter, where we are active aside from when I'm actively having a baby, Instagram, where we stay fairly active, and on our website, storiedarts.com, where you can find all of our episodes, links that we find important, or if there are any show notes that we feel the need to include, we will add them there. So until next time, grab Volume 3 of Kill or Be Killed, and we will see you next week.
Peace.